Hey, welcome everyone. In last week's video, I showed you the emulators that have already died and shouldn't be used anymore, and told you a bit about the history of each one. Throughout this week, I talked to several devs, and today we're going to talk about the emulators that are still active, what they're cooking up, and what's coming in the next few days or the next updates. I want to thank everyone who's been buying games through our sponsor. That might have already changed our current situation. Thank you guys. If you want to buy original games while saving a lot, check out Instant Gaming, the digital store that sells games for various platforms, such as PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. Get games of all genres with discounts of up to 95%. You'll also find a variety of gift cards and credits for other services. You can pay for your order through your credit card on a website with a 4.7 rating on Trustpilot. You're buying games directly from Instant Gaming, not from other retailers. If you encounter any issues, Instant Gaming offers 24/7 support. What are you waiting for to save? Links in the description. If you like long, informative content like this, don't forget to hit like, and if this is your first time on the channel, consider subscribing so you don't miss any content. Let's start by talking about Eden. Like I said, it's not been getting new content on the master build, but the continuous builds keep getting updated, almost daily, even though we can't really tell if each one actually brought some kind of improvement. So it's recommended to always use the nightly builds so you don't get stuck on old updates. From now on, just think of Eden the way you used to be. It's always been better to use the early access version instead of the master one. That said, I want to thank Pikachu, who is still the only one on the Eden team who responds to our messages. He was kind enough to answer a few questions, and even though this isn't an interview, I'm going to share the points I brought up and what he said, in summary form. A lot of people have been complaining about issues on Eden, especially AMD GPU users, and I asked if this was a known problem and if there was any fix or something that would solve it once and for all. The dev said that if you use the latest nightly versions, you won't run into this kind of issue, and that it mostly shows up for people using Windows with an AMD GPU. I also asked why we're stuck on the same master build for so long, and asked if there was some kind of development issue or something blocking new features from being implemented. The answer, again, was that it's recommended to use the nightly builds, and that there's no development problem at the moment, even though some devs on the team have been sick or really busy lately. But overall, everything's fine. At the end, I left it open for the dev to talk about future plans or upcoming news, and he said that going forward, the idea is to keep doing what they've always done, keep implementing graphics fixes and improving the project's overall performance, like they've been doing. Bigger fixes will show up every now and then, but a fix is still a fix, no matter the size of the problem. So let's hope Eden keeps bringing fixes for games that are still problematic and keeps growing the list of compatible games in the Switch library. Eden is today one of the best emulators, especially when it comes to Android, where it's pretty much unbeatable, and we're excited to test the next versions. Moving on to Citron Neo. Even though I haven't been following the project closely just because of lack of time, I've been getting a lot of feedback saying the emulator has been evolving in a surprising way. Some people even sent me comments saying the performance gain, in some cases, reaches 10 or 20%. I remember testing the emulator early on and not seeing that kind of result, but don't worry, I'm going to show you that test later in this video. So the focus of my questions to the dev was exactly that, whether they'd made any kind of fix related to the emulator's core or the graphics side, and whether they noticed this reported performance gain. Different rigs give different results, and the team has been changing dynamic, which is the JIT. Remember, the Switch has a CPU and a GPU. This core, dynamic GPL, is also shared by Eden, Hydra, and Citron Neo, so a change in it benefits everyone. Citron Neo is more conservative, and doesn't make a lot of deep changes to the video core compared to the other forks, which means games that already worked well end up working even better combined with the new dynamic GPL. This doesn't fix new games or solve existing issues, but on the plus side, the fixes made through work on Android. As for what the dev team is preparing for the next versions, whether in compatibility, performance, or other improvements, I was told that right now they're trying to improve compatibility and homebrew functionality. Lisbeth develops exclusively on FreeBSD, while Cheese and B have been working on Android and Windows support, even though Lisbeth would rather people migrate to FreeBSD, since performance is way better on those systems. Cheese has been adding support for decrypted NSP or XCI files, and other emulators will probably follow the same path. I actually think this is going to become a trend now, since there are already 2 emulators going this route, and it's one less reason for us to worry about Nintendo. B has been working on improving NC and the video core for Android. I'm not exactly sure what he did, but he managed to significantly reduce crash frequency in games on Android, and some users reported a lot of improvements because of it. Overall, new features that maybe weren't even considered before are slowly being added, especially now that the Switch is nearing the end of its life cycle. Maybe NSO support gets implemented in the future? We wouldn't be the first ones to try something like that. We're also removing the C package, which is the worst package manager out there, and getting rid of any Yuzu fork that still uses it. Why? Because it's a miserable, chaotic package manager that shouldn't exist. CPM is way better. Lastly, I asked the dev to leave a message or talk about whatever she wanted, and she said that today, Citron Neo isn't trying to compete with Eden or Ryubing. It's just a fun experimentation lab, where they want to test fixes for specific games. The games that are already supported are going to keep working well, while they work on games they're interested in. Citron Neo will probably drop the nightly builds and just keep releasing new versions every day. Like I said before we wrap up this part, let's see if we get a result as different as people in the comments have been reporting between Citron Neo and Eden, in Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, using just the Kakariko benchmark. And over the course of this test, I got a different result than what people told me, but nothing too crazy. In the end, I got an average of 76 FPS on Eden, against 74 FPS on Citron Neo. Like the dev team themselves said, their goal isn't to beat the emulators that already exist, but you can definitely notice a performance gain since the first versions I tested. Overall, the difference didn't even come close to the reported 10 to 20%. In my tests, the performance difference was just 2.7%, basically a tie. Both emulators used the same settings, the same mod, the same save, everything identical. So use whichever one gives you a decent result on your hardware. Now that Citron Neo's UI doesn't have bugs anymore, it looks different and nice. I don't know if there's any performance impact. I'd guess not, since once the game loads the UI just disappears. And some of you asked me if I had news on NxEmu, and I've got plenty. I spent the weeks testing a few games and talked a lot with the dev. Most of the games tested are games that already have issues running on Yuzu forks, so don't be surprised if the list looks small. And in the end, just like in the latest versions, you can already unlock the FPS. We did a quick comparison between it and Eden, and we're going to look at the performance. The dev also showed us a rough timeline of when we'll get the new versions. 0.7 comes out in September, and 0.8 in December. As for what's new in the upcoming versions, in 0.7 we can expect more work on the Android version, compatibility improvements, some kind of compatibility list concept, the ability to install DLCs directly through the emulator. Right now the only working method is converting them together with the game, per game settings, the option to disable VSync. This is already working in the dev builds, and vibration support. In version 0.8, they're planning support for new languages, PGO builds, which can actually deliver around 10 to 15% performance, something I've tested myself in the past, cheat support, mouse interaction with the screen, and auto update. And in version 0.9, which doesn't have an estimated release date yet, they're planning to implement netplay. Talking about more compatible games and their performance, I tested a few games throughout this week. Starting with Bayonetta 2, the game doesn't have any graphical issues and is 100% playable. Bayonetta 3, which before wouldn't even get past the menu, is now playable and running perfectly too. For anyone who had audio and video sync issues during cutscenes, know that, depending on your hardware, this emulator doesn't have that problem. Bowser's Fury was another game that ran well. Besides being one of the lightest 3D games on the console, the experience on NxEmu is great. Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled also runs really well as expected, and as you'll see next, I managed to run the game at almost 200 FPS with VSync disabled. Dragon Ball FighterZ is generally a problematic game, except on Eden, which has already fixed this one. In some emulators the game just doesn't get past the character intro without the necessary hacks. On NxEmu it even gets past the intro, but crashes at another critical point. When you restart or start a new fight, it crashes, and often even freezes Windows. Mario Kart 8, which last time I couldn't get working because the Mii's weren't implemented, actually just needed any firmware version installed for the game to start running normally. Super Mario 3D World also runs without any kind of issue. And to my surprise, Yoshi's Crafted World is running well, with only small shadow issues. Worth remembering that even Yuzu took a long time to run this game on Vulkan. At first it only ran on OpenGL and suffered with shader compilation, and if you were an AMD GPU user, the problem was even worse. And on screen right now you can see the games I tested that didn't work. Monster Hunter Rise, nothing. Now let's see how the emulator performs compared to Eden, which currently has the best performance. Just a reminder that we don't need to run Switch games at over 200 FPS. That's just a waste of resources and unnecessary heat generation. These tests are just here to answer users' questions. All of them were done at native resolution, in docked mode, with no mods since NxEmu still doesn't support that. Starting with Bayonetta 3, the difference was 116 average FPS on Eden against 99 on NxEmu, meaning around 17% more performance for Eden. Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to invalidate this test, because I recorded in different locations without realizing it, but the difference got close to 100 FPS, with Eden ahead again. And lastly, Super Mario Odyssey, where, not really sure why, this time we got a higher average on NxEmu. Either way, know that this is the game the developer has been optimizing from the start to test the emulator. I don't know if it was luck or something I can't quite explain, but here the result was better. Either way, it's still too early to compare NxEmu with the others since it's still got a lot of development ahead of it, and a lot of things can improve, just like Eden. Talking about the game conversion method, it's now been improved and you can convert pretty much any game without the restriction that existed in the last version, when I did the first test. There are also 2 developers maintaining their own programs to decompile the games. One of them, so far, doesn't have any public repository, but the dev said he's going to create one soon. And there's also another project, this one already with a repository and at least 2 releases, which, while it still doesn't let you convert every game, already handles the basic work. Unfortunately, this kind of software, as you can probably imagine, can't be shared here, and I imagine that's exactly what's limiting people from testing NxEmu. The issues I reported, where the system would freeze after converting a game, apparently only happened on my PC, and with the new versions that's been completely fixed. Talking a bit about the Ryubing or Ryubing forks, the lesser known one is Kenji-NX, which is still alive. Kenji-NX is being actively maintained. Keaton is the main maintainer, of course, but what you might not know is that most of the work he does ends up going to Ryubing first. So this fork, just like Citron Neo, ended up becoming a testing ground for some features, like most of the Windows ARM support and the GPU VRAM extension. Being a fork, it has the advantage of pulling updates from the original project, Ryubing, and takes the opportunity to contribute back to the main project too. Keaton is currently working on COS-Mic Crisp support, which is a driver that translates Vulkan to Metal, basically an iOS thing, and Ava 12, related to Ryubing's graphical interface. He's made good progress on both, but he's got a busy life, so there's no guarantee anything will be implemented in the coming days. He plans to keep working on this as time allows. It's hard to focus on specific hardware or features without testers, and a lot of people give up before he gets enough data to solve the problems. And yes, he wants to keep going with the Android release. Kenji-NX has been waiting on the same fixes Ryubing got, but unlike Ryubing, it doesn't have canary or nightly versions. So to test the latest changes, you basically have to compile from source. As for Ryubing, the project keeps evolving and didn't die with Nintendo's DMCA. If you want to know more about that, I recommend the video where I talked about the emulators that ended. I had access to the pre-1.4 changelog, and for anyone already wondering, the version isn't out yet. The full changelog is going to be in the video description for anyone who wants to check it out in full, since if I read all of it here, we'd end up with a video over 50 minutes long. But to sum it up, the highlights of the changelog: Pro Controller support was added, along with Steam Controller and several others, including the option to use the gyroscope for those with support. Along with that, HD Rumble was also implemented for Switch controllers. As for game improvements and compatibility, Ring Fit Adventure now boots into menus. Pokemon Legends ZALDN now works. Animal Crossing New Horizons 3.0.0 or higher, in LDN mode, now works. Tomodachi Life Living the Dream is now playable, and looks better for AMD GPU users. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and other titles affected by inexplicable crashing should be fixed now. Splatoon 3 no longer gets stuck loading forever. Just Dance no longer has corrupted videos. Rhythm Heaven Groove is now playable. Among maybe thousands of other updates. As you can see, the project is more alive than ever, and I can't wait to try version 1.4. Last but not least, there's another project called Nexium, which is in development. Nexium is a project built from scratch, which I started following about a month ago, when you could only run Pew Pew Tetris. And in the last update I got on the project, about a week ago, 7 games were already playable. But now you're probably wondering, if there are already several emulators in a mature state, why the heck are they making Nexium? I'll go through the main points. First, since it's an emulator built from scratch, it can have a completely different compatibility list than other projects, meaning issues with Unreal Engine might simply not exist there, and problematic games, like Ubisoft's Rabbids franchise, might finally work decently. The second point is that the emulator is also going to use the approach of only working with decrypted games, meaning it stays further away from Nintendo's notorious DMCAs. On the project you'll find a dev with years of experience, and several other big names, like Collecting and a few others who worked mainly on the first Citron. I've already seen the project's interface. It's beautiful and unique, and I'm going to show you some gameplay concepts. Obviously you can't expect games hitting 200 FPS like on NxEmu, since the process is still at a really early stage. So any game that shows the title screen or already runs the game is already big progress. All the games or images shown here were also taken from the project's development diary, so by the time you're watching this, the games might already be running better or even perfectly. As for the progress report, they released the July report, and things have evolved a lot over the past 2 months. There were almost 500 commits between May and July, focused almost entirely on the graphics side of the emulator. And what I thought was cool is that they don't hide the mistakes, they show the whole process, including the broken screens along the way. Let's get to the examples they shared. First, Super Mario Odyssey, which was like the emulator's trial by fire. Some days the screen showed up upside down, then it turned into that neon green and pink mess everywhere. But within a few days they fixed it, and today the game already gets to the mode selection screen, working properly. Then there's Mario Kart 64. The title screen was showing up with some black rectangles covering part of the image. The reason was kind of funny. The emulator was forgetting which texture to use from one frame to the next. They fixed it with a really small code change, but it unlocked the game's visuals. Like I said, Pew Pew Tetris already gets a game, and there's not much of a story with that one. Besides that, they also improved the shader cache system, but they made sure to point out something important. Cache doesn't hide rendering bugs, it just avoids recompiling shaders all the time. I'm still going to show you some images so you can see what the emulator is already capable of rendering. Cave Story gets to gameplay. Binding of Isaac only had the menu shown. Princess Peach Showtime still has missing items and textures. Star Fox 64, or the decompiled project, gets in game. Super Mario 64 gets in game. A screenshot of the Super Mario Odyssey menu before it was fixed. And Sonic Mania, which nowadays even runs on a fridge display. And that's it for now. Nexium still doesn't have a release date. I already have a few versions, but haven't tested them yet, though from what's been shown, the project seems to be evolving in an impressive way. Don't go anywhere yet, I've got 2 more things to tell you, even though I'm not testing it today. For everyone who keeps insisting Yuzu had better performance than the current forks, I've already made a video about that, and a dev created a Yuzu revival, where all that was implemented was support for newer firmwares, but the project stayed untouched, exactly as it was before it was finalized. So for anyone who still insists on using Yuzu and wants support for more recent games and updates, you can use this project. Next week I'm going to run some quick tests to see if the more current emulators, like Eden and Citron Neo, deliver real performance gains or if it's just placebo. And there's more, another revival. Dev Wildcard brought Skyline back. From the screenshots I got, the visual quality is really good, with a decent amount of RAM savings, like Skyline always had. And I asked the tester if he had heating issues like the original Skyline had, and got a screenshot with acceptable temperatures. Since this project was introduced to me this week, I haven't had time to test it yet, but in next week's video, along with Yuzu, I'll bring more news and a bunch of tests for you guys. So, that's all the Nintendo Switch emulation news for now. Nothing here was a guess, everything was clarified and are the actual words of the original devs, so don't forget to boost the video with a like or a comment to help with engagement. To the members and patrons, thank you for directly helping with the creation of this channel's content. Your names will be immortalized in this video, as a thank you. And that's this week's video. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.